Johannesburg is getting a new mayor again, because you've probably heard or read that exact sentence 8, 9 times maybe in the last 7, 8 years. Johannesburg has been an absolute disaster of unstable government, constantly collapsing coalitions, and absolute decay of the city because of failing local government, not providing basic services, getting anything done, or getting anything fixed. But wherever you are in South Africa, this is a video worth watching and a story worth knowing, because it shows all of the dangers of coalition governments and how when coalitions fail and there is unstable local government and bad acting political parties, how it meaningfully affects everyday South Africans' lives, makes them worse, and causes the decay and arguably in some areas the collapse of even cities as important, influential, economically powerful, populous, and politically influential as Johannesburg. So let's talk about what happens when coalitions constantly collapse and why we need, as voters, to show political parties that they need to fight for coalitions to work rather than look to their own self-interest and make coalitions collapse whenever they feel like they're not working in their favor. This is The Issue with Dan Corder. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. And this is the issue with Johannesburg's failing coalition disasters. Quick reminder, or if you still don't know, we now have a weekday morning news worth knowing podcast, 20 to 30 minutes every single day of the working week about all the news you need to know about South Africa. It's called Dan Corder in the Mornings, and we'd love for you to join us there also. Dan Corder in the Morning, me doing all of the radio energy that I miss now that I do TV instead. Right, let's talk about Johannesburg. Johannesburg has had a really terrible, I'm going to say decade, because for the last 8 to 10 years, Johannesburg has been cursed by political parties fighting over leadership positions and control of the mayorship, of MMC positions, and local governing councils. And that never gets as much press or attention as, say, national elections, as, say, Ramaphosa and the GNU, or even provincial elections, like, you know, governments of like provincial unity. But local government is so important because it's at local government that basic services need to be delivered, that roads need to be fixed, that water and sewage and electricity provision needs to be done effectively, that the management and maintenance of a city and town needs to happen really well. And Johannesburg has had almost the worst of this problem out of the whole of the country, because it's probably the most competitive city or town in South Africa. And by that I mean no party is close to getting a majority in local government in Johannesburg, which means that they have to, for the last 10 years, form coalitions to govern, which means political parties have to work together. And coalitions are now South Africa's everyday reality at all levels of government. And to be fair, a lot of political parties have been figuring out for the first time how to use them. But there have been a lot of disasters with coalitions across South Africa. Aberge, unstable coalitions. Tshwane, unstable, constantly changing coalitions. But Johannesburg, it's been the worst. 8 or 9 mayorships, depending on how you're going to define Mpopalatse's reign in the last 8 years. That means that every year on average, basically, about every 12 months on average, the coalition that has ruled Johannesburg has collapsed, or there's been a new election which has caused a new set of ruling parties to combine, which means a new mayor, new MMCs, new heads of departments, and they all come in with fresh perspectives, things that they need to learn, and their own plans, and then they on average get like 6 months to a year, and then they're kicked out again. And then you have to get a new mayor, and you've got to get new MMCs and new leadership. And that constant churn causes basic services to not be delivered. It causes projects that are supposed to look after a city or a town to not happen, or to happen a tiny bit and then go away. And Johannesburg has had that really badly. But it's actually even worse than that recently, because in recent times, ever since Mpopalatse's reign, which was really kind of an extraordinary moment, because Mpopalatse was the DA mayor for a while, and then a sitting of local government managed to, through opposition to her reign, kind of push her out on some kind of technicality, and then she went to court, and the court ruled that the way that the opposition parties had moved was illegitimate and not within the rules and not correct, and so Palatse was put back in to mayorship. And then, bizarrely, when she got back, the people who had been in her mayor's office in the time that she was away had changed the locks. Like the level of petty to just like minorly troll and inconvenience her. And ever since after that, the DA and Action SA and others just refused to put together a local government or to rule the place. And ever since then, it's been the ANC and the EFF in coalition in Johannesburg. But they are both fairly significant parties with fairly significant followings. And so they both wanted the mayor of their coalition to be from their party. And then when they realized that they couldn't agree and form a coalition because neither of them would budge on having their own mayor, they decided this is what we're going to do. We're going to get a really tiny party and we're going to take one of their elected representatives and make them the mayor, and we'll control them. Because a tiny party, even if they have the mayorship, has no meaningful influence or weight in local politics. And so we'll have a puppet mayor who we will control. And they went to Al Jama, a very, very small party, which has got a small number of votes in their favor and a couple of elected representatives. And they went for Thapelo Ahmad. Now, a puppet mayor from a tiny party is always a bad idea for a city or a town, because that mayor's got no control, because they've got no backing or support themselves to actually get anything done. They exist at the whims of these other, in this case, these other two parties. But there was another problem. Thapelo Ahmad was a total disaster. He was so incompetent, so inefficient, so seemingly unable to can about any part of his job that eventually he was removed by the ANC EFF coalition because he was becoming too embarrassing, not for Al Jama, too embarrassing for them to keep installed in power. And there is one very, very iconic moment where he did an interview on SABC with iconic journalist Sakina Kamwendo, and the level of secondhand embarrassment from the butchering of this interview that he did, it's actually hard to watch.
What would this loan potentially be for?
It is for service delivery issues. It is for technologies, for smart city, where we can deploy.
What smart city? A decade ago, we were talking about the installation of CCTV cameras in the city of Johannesburg. A few weeks ago, you signed a new memorandum of understanding, again, around cameras. And
Correct.
We see those cameras capturing crime that you are doing very little about.
You are correct. Remember, I'm not in the office for the past decade. I'm only a month.
No. I'm saying this started
correct.
More than a decade ago.
All right.
You have belatedly, about 2-3 weeks ago,
Correct.
signed a new memorandum of understanding.
Correct.
And yet we don't see the return on investment.
There is.
Where?
There is in the city.
Where, Mr. Mayor? How many people have you convicted as a result of the installation of that technology?
There is a few of them.
What is a few?
I'm telling you, there is a few of them. I can't give you the number.
So then the ANC and the EFF were like, well, we're not going to use Thapelo Ahmad anymore. Let's just get someone else from Al Jama. And they went back to Al Jama Sesame Street and they found another puppet, this time Kabelo Gomanda, who was arguably as bad, if not worse, than Thapelo Ahmad. Kabelo Gomanda has been the mayor in charge, overseeing, but actually not even underseeing, just not seeing. He's had his eyes closed, basically, of Johannesburg for the last little while. This is the guy who went to the catastrophic Joburg building fire in the old CBD last year, arrived late, had virtually nothing to say, put no plans in place, didn't inspire hope or confidence or take control of the situation. The ANC did, which showed the power dynamic of this puppet and his puppet masters. He is also the mayor who went and looked at the disastrous Bree Street explosion, and all these months later, it's still exploded. It hasn't been fixed because he's got no control, no power, and no capacity. So finally now, yesterday, he fell on his sword and resigned. And now we're going to get a new mayor, but it's not going to be a puppet anymore because the ANC in local government has been directed to engage with other political parties in line with the way that national ANC government has done. So it looks like at this moment they're not going to work with the DA, but it looks like they might work with the EFF, but it looks almost certain that they're going to work with Action SA, which is incredibly ironic and hilarious because Action SA ran their whole campaign on we'll never work with the ANC ever. In fact, during the GNU talks, Herman Mashaba was asked if he would take a call from the ANC about working with them, and he said they mustn't even bother calling me. I will call them, and I won't call them in 300 years. But Politics is politics, and now Action SA sees it is worthwhile for them to engage with the ANC and install an ANC mayor for Johannesburg, and in exchange it looks like they're going to get a speaker position for Action SA. So they have figured that they will get some kind of personal benefit trade-off and have abandoned all their policy positions and statements that they sold to their voters before the national election that just happened in May. And it's just politics, but it just shows that all these political parties work exactly the same way. So there are competing rumors about what the ANC is going to do when trying to form a new ruling coalition on Friday. They might go with just Action SA and a few small parties and create a confidence and supply agreement, which essentially means it's not a real coalition, it's a coalition light. We spoke about this before the GNU was formed. Confidence and supply agreement essentially means that the bigger party gives a smaller party some benefit, like the speaker position, and in exchange, Action SA, in this case, the smaller party agrees to vote with the bigger party, the ANC, on votes of no confidence to keep the mayor, in this case, in power for stability. And also the supply is vote with them on budgets, because budgets need to be passed for the functioning of a city to happen in the departments. And so the most basic functionings of government can work and the mayor stays in power in this case. But nothing else is guaranteed and nothing else can really happen. That's why it's a coalition light. And that's obviously not great for the city of Johannesburg if that happens. It's not good, because it means that all the other functions of government probably will happen very slowly or not happen at all, because Action SA, in this case, the smaller party, hasn't committed to working with the ANC and falling in line with them on the bigger things. But that is what it looks like they might do. The other thing they might do is try and create a broader coalition with Action SA and the EFF and a few others. I don't know how that is going to work. That doesn't sound stable either. But the long and the short of it is, according to all reports, Dada Morero is going to become the mayor. He's an ANC member. Again, because again, he was already the mayor of Johannesburg in 2022. From the 30th of August to the 25th of October, he was mayor for 26 days. He collected one paycheck. And that shows you the disastrous instability that continually happens to Johannesburg. And it will happen in other cities and has happened in other cities and towns across South Africa already, unless the politicians and the political parties change the way that they treat coalitions. Because up until this point, political parties have been all too willing to walk away from coalitions. And it's all of them. The ANC's done it, the DA's done it, the EFF's done it, Action SA has flip-flopped on this. They've all done it consistently because they believe that walking away from coalitions to make them collapse is better for their own self-interest, even though every time a coalition collapses, the people of a town and a city suffer. Because again, departments stop working, MMCs lose their jobs, there's no ultimate leadership, they've got to go through the rigmarole and the mess and the procedure and the technicalities and the bureaucracy and the red tape of creating a new ruling council. Which means that basic services don't get delivered, projects stop running, new projects have to start. All that churn causes a city or town to suffer and basically be paralyzed. But in the case of Johannesburg, we are just sick of it all now. It's very clear that the city of Johannesburg's people want a stable, effective government to stop the decay and slow collapse of this massive city. And I really hope that slowly but surely, the political parties start to realize that they can impress potential voters way more by being a part of stable coalitions and delivering effective governance on a city than by walking away. Because that's what we really need in local government. That's what we really need so that our day-to-day lives are better. And I don't really care who becomes mayor. Like, I don't have skin in this game. I'm not supporting a political party in Johannesburg to try and become mayor or whatever. I just want whoever it is to lead a stable coalition that will be able to effectively arrest the decline of this city and improve the lives of all of us who live in Johannesburg. That's it. That's the issue.